Hello everybody and welcome back to KXP. In the last episode we spent 2.5 hours and went on an epic journey across the entirety of the map. And if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend it. It was quite a long journey, but quite a fun as we visited every single POI in the game. But we will be continuing our series from there. We got a lot of science from that journey. Our Kerbals got a lot of experience and are looking forward to continuing the exploration process. So let's go ahead and get started right back into the same save file as always. Here we are back at the KSC. We have quite a few contracts to do because unfortunately the trip around the world didn't really offer us as far as a lot of funds go. But we've got launched the Minmus station as well as launching a Kerbin space station. And so that's what our goal for today is going to be. We're going to try to accomplish both those missions in the same launch because when we've done our testing, turns out that once we launch the Kerbin space station, it satisfies that contract. We can actually just continue on and push that space station towards Minmus and solve that one as well. So we're going to do both of those in our time. We've got 411 science to spend, quite a lot. We're going to go through here, and I'm just going to be upfront with you. I think I may have mismanaged my science, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. We have quite a lot of stuff to unlock, some really great parts. We're pretty far down in the tech tree, so everything is quite a lot to spend. As you see here, this is 300 science just for that node. Everything kind of in this line is going to be 300 or more. I would love to start aggressively pursuing space planes. I think that would be a nice logical next step. However, there's a lot to get through before we can adequately make one. I take a lot of time to look at this nuclear power. I want to start progressing in our nuclear capabilities because we're going to need that once we start going interplanetary. This specialized electrics, this is what I should have spent my science on, I believe. It does give us a new experiment, even though it's the asteroid experiment. We don't really have that capability. But it also gives us the radioscopic generator, which is a nuclear fuel generator that produces power when sunlight is not as feasible of an option, and that would be great for a space station kind of build, something that we're going to be working on for future endeavors. That would be great to start including. However, I kind of got distracted by some of the other nuclear fuel things. This Lynx fuel storage was kind of fun. We used the Lynx a lot in the previous episode, so I ended up pursuing these nuclear fission reactors, but we don't end up utilizing them in this episode, so I feel like we could have utilized that science a little bit better. But anyways, with nothing else to do and 1,200,000 funds in our bank accounts, we have a lot of capability of making a cool, really fancy and grand space station to just launch all in one launch. We have access to some pretty heavy-duty fairings, some pretty large ones, so we can kind of build this, and instead of launching a traditional style space station where you build it in pieces, sending up all in different launches, we're going to build this all in one launch and just send it. So here I am just going through the FreeIVA tab, and we're going to be adding on all the different pieces that we can, I'm not in the FreeIVA tab just yet, but I will be soon. Looking at all the different pieces that include an IVA that we can send our Kerbals through. It's going to be quite a long time before we can get to this stage in the KSP POV series, but if I can make a cool, space station that can handle everything, we could just port the design over to that save file when we get there, and so that'd be kind of fun. So I'm going to design this with the IVA aspect in mind, and for that I'm going to want to make sure that all of my compartments can interact with each other, that my Kerbals can make it from one side of the spaceship to the other without with minimal need for EVA travel. Yeah, those stairs were a little useless. It'll be nice for surface bases, but for a space station like this, I like these cockpits. I'm not entirely sure where they came from, but they're very cool to use. I was thinking maybe it'd be a nice little escape pod sort of situation, but it just wasn't feasible. They weren't able to traverse through the modules. And that is a big aspect of uh, what's important on a space station like this. You want to be able to move freely between all of them. This is, I mentioned it a couple times, the mod FreeIVA is what is powering a lot of this episode, and we'll be showing off a lot. Highly recommend it. So yeah, so this first part of the build, I'm really just experimenting with what is available, all the different pieces that we can attach to this, and then I want to determine the best way of putting it together. So it's a little awkward looking now, but it will start to make sense eventually. But it's been a little bit since we've done a build aspect to some of these episodes. We kind of, in the last RP1 episode, kind of had to skip the build just to go forward with some progress. In the, the last, in the trip around the world video, we didn't do the build for the Phileas Fogg vehicles, and I can't remember what we did in KXP right before that, but I feel like we've been skipping the builds a little more frequently, so felt that it was kind of nice to kind of return back to this and just see the thought process as you go along here. Building space stations, building ground bases is not something that I have too much experience with, but I do enjoy. I like the need to think for future problems, future challenges. So this is when I remember that we have cupolas unlocked and things will start to settle out in their design, because both of the missions, having a cupola and a science lab are both part of the requirements. A lot of it is have this or that, but by having both a cupola and a science lab, we satisfy those requirements. We're going to get rid of that center Mach 1 cabin because we just don't need it. There's a lot of space on the station already. So now I need to really start considering my battery and my power situation. And so we're going to take these circular batteries and just kind of stack them up. We have access to some pretty high-tech solar panels now, thanks to the advancements we made in the last episode. So I am pretty confident that this space station will have all the power necessary, because we're only bringing it to Minmus. We're not going to take this to a place where the solar power is weak to the point where we're going to need those radioscopic generators like I mentioned earlier. So here I am. I want to have this space station primarily fueled by nuclear power, and so I have these, but a singular nerve engine is very weak with its thrust to weight ratio, so I wanted to make up for that by having 3 of them. So I have this kind of multi-coupler thing going on. But I will go through a couple different iterations on this. I'm never really happy. I do like the look of this right here. I really enjoyed the look of that. But batteries are important, and we're going to need a lot of them. Because it's not enough to just make sure that this station runs, but if we're going to be doing any kind of research in the science lab, which is, ultimately the goal, it's going to need a lot of power per day just to handle all that science, in addition to all the other functions that it'll have. So the goal for this space station above Minmus is to rendezvous some of the science that we have on the surface that's being collected in the rovers. bring that up to the station and have a better usage of the science lab, because you can get a lot more data processed out of this type of lab than the little miniature lab that is part of the rover. It's a lot more limited. So here we are putting the batteries back into those little columns. This time we now have a stack of 3, so should have more than enough, but I'm going to go ahead and use the Ampere mod to check my dark side calculator. And indeed, we do have enough battery and power production to last the night on the dark side. We did need some reaction control as well as a computer to handle the remote tech autopilots. Still trying to figure out the solar power situation. I didn't like that the solar panels were clipping. For the most part, it's not going to be a problem, but just on the off chance that the 2 of them just tap ever so slightly and break, you know, then I'm left with significantly less solar power or no solar power at all. That's just no good. We're also going to need some RCS on this. We're going to deal with that eventually. Right now I'm trying to figure out a better way to get my solar panels on. I don't like the 3-way symmetry that it's given me, so I decided to use this engine plate instead to bring it to a 4-way. And then that'll just make everything so much easier when it comes to our solar panel placements. So these aren't as beefy as the other solar panels that we're using, but these are still going to be more than enough for us, and then they don't have any problems clipping. We are going to need to auto strut the heck out of this thing because this is a long station. It's going to be utilizing low thrust to weight power, which can lead to some wobbliness. And earlier than that, we're going to do a lot of high thrust to weight power, which also leads to wobbliness. It's just a good idea to auto strut no matter what, but when dealing with long crafts like this, and especially this 4-way battery stack and fuel stack. Yep, huge wobble risk right there. So auto strutting is important. We are coming up to the final designs of this. As you can see here, we've put the lower stage, so the upper part is the upper part of the space station is complete. That is the final design. I'm not sure the exact names of each of the pieces. It's been a while since I worked on this, but the list of the mods used will be in the description below, and there's quite a few. Some of it is far future technology, some of it is space station habitation technology, so best way to check is in there. But we'll be showing you the insides of it later to see exactly what each of those pieces look like. I didn't utilize every single piece possible. I wanted to just kind of keep a nice simple design and make it the most kind of realistic as possible while still maintaining its Kerbalism. Not Kerbalism, but you know, Kerbal-like nature. So I was having a hard time figuring out how to attach these 4 nuclear engines to the next stage of this, because without decouplers on them, that little adapter was not connecting to the engines very easily. So the solution that I ended up taking was I took this engine plate, removed that, and at the bottom node I attached this decoupler, and I put the engine stacks back in place. And then now I have a singular node to which I can attach the lower stage onto that decoupler. So let's first get it all tucked into a fairing. Like I mentioned before, we've got access to some pretty advanced fairing technology, so we had ones wide enough that I knew that I would have no problem just wrapping it all up into a singular thing, and we can just launch it all at once. I did make this weird kind of connection at the top to allow the front cockpit to stick outside of the fairing. Like I mentioned earlier, I want to be able to port this over to our KXP POV at some point, and I thought it would be nice to be able to see our full ascent through that front cockpit when we do eventually launch this in a first-person IVA only kind of situation. So it's a weird shape, but by allowing the front of it to stick out of the fairing, we have a lot more views to have. So we're now going to be testing the launch vehicle. We do need to hire a couple more scientists. That is Ribme and Phineas. Great names. So let's go ahead and test that launch vehicle. It does quite well, but the thrust to weight ratio is pretty bad upon takeoff, so we're going to add some side boosters just to give it a little bit of a head start. We're going to use these, I forget what these are. There's not the casters, I believe. Not. I'm thinking of RP1. I forget what SRBs these are, but we will eventually change them out for something else because while they were good, they were also just not good enough. So, but we do put on some reverse thrust separatrons as well as an explosive device, so that way we don't leave any space debris floating in orbit above Kerbin. We're also throwing some separatrons on the sides of these SRBs, but having a little difficulty with the symmetry. For some reason it was glitching out, so I decided to fix that by bringing it just back to a singular attachment instead of symmetrical, and then we can put our separatrons on there on both sides and then just copy that and make it symmetrical there. So now we're going to put our staging into the correct order. We do have some parachutes on the SRBs to help for stage recovery, save a little bit of money, always good. And we do have a thrust to weight ratio of over 1, so I'm not really going to pay much attention. I'm going to do some final adjustments on some things, but like I mentioned before, those SRBs will go in the final design. I do need to make sure that there's communication available on this space station, because what's the point of learning all that science if we can't share it with the KSC? If we don't have a way of communicating and transmitting that science, then the only way to get all those science points from the data process would be to land the space station and recover it on Kerbin, and that is not going to happen. So gotta make sure that we don't forget. And we are playing with remote tech, so that means that we have to be a lot more thoughtful with our communication dishes and how we set them up. So we are throwing some of the tracking lights on here from the tracking lights mod, and that will help with not just allowing us to see our space station in the dark, but whenever we need to dock anything to those two side ports, those tracking lights will keep that in the spotlight until we make a safe docking. That's been the biggest usage for the tracking lights is in docking, because it can just make things so much easier, especially if you're using a docking port camera, like the docking port camera alignment indicator. Just being able to have a constant spotlight on what it is that you're trying to dock with, even on the dark side of a planet, super helpful. We're connecting the fairing once again in a kind of weird way. We have it gold because I like to keep the fairings gold when they are rated for Kerbals. Just a nice way of separating them. So make sure our Kerbals are set up, the right ones are in the cockpit. So that way we're going to have them all launch in the cockpit and then disperse into their appropriate job positions later. Like I mentioned, here we are taking off the side boosters. We're going to just replace it with some liquid fuel twin bore engines. And we're going to do a fuel duct between them. Gonna add a little nose cone with a little more liquid fuel in there, and then top it off with another parachute so that way we can recover those stages, because those are fairly expensive boosters. Throw a little structural support on the side, and then we'll do another test. test came out pretty well. Just a few final touches on things, and that is primarily auto-strutting the new pieces to the rocket. They were a little wobbly on takeoff, so this will just help keep them in line. Paint the center tank orange, and gonna add just a little more fuel to push us a little farther. And that was one final successful test. I did everything from start to finish. A little bit of stability upon takeoff will be nice, so I'm going to add these little struts on the inside. And other than that, I am fully confident that we will be able to handle our missions with this. So let's go ahead and get this on the launch pad, get ready to go. It's going to be a relatively calm launch, and I'm going to leave a lot of the footage uncut because this is the first time we've done a launch of this scale, this caliber. We've never done a space station in this playthrough, and it's quite a big mission, so we're going to just kind of hang out, relax, enjoy a KXP launch, go from there. I was getting this weird graphical glitch where these lines were crossing across the sky. That was kind of fun. It was like some planes had gone by a little earlier in the day. I was hoping to see the parachutes pop open, but I did not. But I have full faith that they will be recovered without a problem. And even after our side boosters were separated, we still have a thrust to weight ratio of over 1, so we are going to be heading off into space without an issue today. The matter is our trajectory to make sure that we do an efficient gravity turn. We go ahead and lock ourselves to prograde, and we're going to head east. There is a glitch with this, or a bug or whatever with this mission. As you see here, the launch to Kerbal Space Station is already successfully completed. It even counts us as surviving. It even says that we should be in orbit, but I'm not sure why it successfully completed, but nonetheless, we finished that mission. So it's all the more important that we actually do get this to orbit, so that way we put our money where our mouth was and achieve it. However, currently we're struggling a little bit. As you can see here, we had to bring ourselves off our prograde marker and lift up a little bit because our apoapsis was only about 35 kilometers and we were already pitched far too horizontal. We needed a little bit more height to that. So pitching up like this is gonna help with that. And we do have thrust on our side, as you see from our surface speedometer. We're not losing speed, meters per second acceleration, so we should have plenty of thrust to bring us up to the altitude that we want, and then eventually into orbit. So we went ahead and safely separated our fairings. I had it set to way too many sides. I think it was like 5 or 6 sides that it just broke into, which was kind of funny. But nonetheless, we reached an apoapsis that was ideal for us. Not too high above the Kármán line, but still enough. However, we stopped thrusting still too early into the atmosphere, so we have this kind of spin that we're going through. And we can't time warp our way to stop the rotation until we actually reach the 70 kilometers of space. We do throw on some RCS, which does help alleviate it, and the atmosphere is thin enough that it was able to move a little bit. And now that we are in space, we can time warp and lock ourselves to our position a lot more easily. We plotted in our maneuver into flight computer, and we'll let that handle the circularization burn. We have plenty of fuel, and this was heavily tested out in crash simulation, so pretty confident in this station's ability. I do wish I put a few more lights on there. It would have been nice to see it a little better lit a little better, but nonetheless, pretty happy with this design. A lot of wobble due to such a high thrust to weight ratio of those engines. We got, 4 Kodiaks, I believe, mainsails. It might be mainsails. So a lot of power in a vacuum. Like I mentioned before, the wobbliness of such a long station is hard to escape. So the more you auto strut, the more you physically strut, the better off you're going to be. And without having to go to the next stage, we circularize our orbit pretty easily. And we earned quite a lot of money due to our massive scale launches program activated in the Strategia mod. I'm going to go ahead and kind of skip forward a little bit. Right now we're just adjusting the inclination of our orbit so that way we can get into Minmus's sphere of influence a lot more easily. So, I just went ahead and skipped the planning and plotting for that. And then we're also going to just go ahead and move on to the transfer from one to the other. So we're going to plot our point there and then go ahead and bring our way to the maneuver itself. We get to see Jewel and Moho off in the distance. Hopefully we can visit both those soon. I'm thinking I might remove the research bodies mod that makes traveling to other celestial bodies more challenging, because I think it might just be hindering our progress in this series. And this series is all about exploration and pushing the boundaries, and I think I'd rather just go and do that now, especially considering we have remote tech on here, so dealing with interplanetary communications is going to be significantly more challenging than standard KSP. And just like that, we separate our lower stage and transfer into the nuclear power age and destroy the space debris behind us. And pretty happy with it. Our thrust to weight is pretty decent. It's still going to be a long burn in order to achieve our goal, but it is 4 times less long than it would be with just the singular nerve. So I am going to time warp the fast forward the footage about 1,500%, but it was doing this nice little spin thing, so I kind of wanted to show that a little bit. Here we are at the end of our burn. We're going to switch into the map mode and see that we actually passed our desired point. So we're going to place a midway maneuver, not exactly halfway, but midway enough, and we're going to fix our trajectory. We want to come in fairly low, but we still need to be high enough that we have enough of an ability to circularize without too much trouble, because these are nuclear engines after all, so they do take a lot to close the gap of that orbit. We also want to make sure that we're not so high that we don't pass, that we pass straight on through Minmus's sphere of influence before we have the time to actually circularize. So when it comes to nuclear engines, you have to kind of be a little more cautious with the whens and hows you plot your maneuvers with. So now that we have our trajectory, we have our mid-course correction that we will do at some point. I wanted to take this time and hop into the IVA mode, really show off the FreeIVA mod aspect to this build, and just how cool it can be to build a space station that you can wander through in first person. And like I mentioned, it's going to be a little bit before we can get to this same position in KSP POV, so this is kind of like a little taste for that series as well of what's to come. This is a new change with the last update, which I love. It used to be closed forever, but now it is closed until game restart. And the difference is that when it would close forever, it didn't actually close forever. It would just close for each mission. And it would appear in the next mission. You'd have to click that off again. But this one will now just close it until the game restarts. And what that is that I'm talking about is just the hint sheet for what each of the buttons do. But here is our docking port IVA. There's this handy little seat. That joystick is wobbling around because we have RCS on, so it's just adjusting to that. But that's a nice little place. We've got this little, I guess, kitchen, or not kitchen, but a little dining area or planning table right there. So nice little meeting space. Beautiful view of Kerbin right there. Then here we are into our little hallway, and these are the two protrusions that you see. Once again, I'm not sure which mod these are from, but they are FreeIVA capable. Here's a little dinosaur, a little squeak toy. Absolutely love it. This window leads outside. As you see here, it says Go EVA. We don't want to do that right now, but that is one way that we can go. And that is one of the sides that the docking port is on. This is the other side, and this is the hydroponics lab. This was just too cool not to include, so this was one of the pieces I need to make sure. But look how well these insides are decorated. Just love it so much, and I can't wait to actually make surface spaces that are IVA compatible as well. So now it's time to go into the cupola, and I am surprised to see a Kerbal in the seat. What are you doing here? Milme, you weren't on this mission. You weren't supposed to be aboard. Why did you come aboard? And who are you? Henbrit? Henbrit, you're supposed to be down in R&R. You just got back from the 90-day. Tossed the Triceratops by accident, picked up some orange juice. So now the Triceratops is just floating around. So now I gotta take a peek into the science lab to see if there's any more stowaways. And of course there is. Paduki. Paduki, you're supposed to be processing that science you picked up from the around the world trip. What are you doing here? Nonetheless, go ahead and take my seat. An extra scientist aboard, 3 extra Kerbals aboard the space station. So I think that is what we will be doing in the next episode, is sending out a taxi to go pick them up and bring them back home, because they're not scheduled for this mission, and their actions will be punished. But it's nice to have goals. So we are going to be continuing this. I mean, this space station's on a trajectory to intercept with Minmus sphere of influence. There's no way that we're going to be canceling the mission early and using all of our fuel to negate that intercept and stay in Kerbin's sphere of influence to make the rendezvous a little easier. We're just going to have to do a more complicated rendezvous and pick them up from Minmus. So I went ahead and skipped past the mid-course correction, and now we are just on our way to intercept. All of that's kind of been seen before, mid-course corrections, interceptions, and all that. So we're just going to kind of skip to this part. With the RCS and the pretty heavy-duty reaction wheel, this station is actually really easy to maneuver around and get focused on its target. That science notification that we're getting was some of the weather analysis from the poles of Kerbin. Once again, the endeavors of the intrepid crew from the last episode. So it's nice. We'll be getting some trickling science every now and then from those. And we pass our apoapsis and now enter the sphere of Minmus once again. And we're going to get ready to do our maneuver. It's only 212 meters per second, so it's a pretty cheap interception in orbit. It's going to bring us to, I think, like 300 kilometers above the surface. I can't remember exactly what our periapsis is, but high enough that we are going to want to bring ourselves down. I want to keep this station fairly low. I believe there is a minimum apoapsis and periapsis required for the contract, and I believe it is low. It is that squeak every time, it makes me laugh. I didn't actually notice that sound until the editing process, so this entire time that treat was waiting for me. But that squeak was that triceratops that we had tossed out into the open. When the engines kicked on, it pushed the entire craft forward, but of course anything that is floating, free floating in zero gravity gets pushed against the side of the craft, and so that little squeak was that triceratops hitting the wall of the craft, and that made me laugh so much. It's going to happen again at one point, so I hope you enjoy that as much as I did. But anyways, like I said, mentioned before, this is a fairly cheap burn, so it doesn't take us long at all to circularize. Oh, and our mission parameters is going to require us to have a nice low orbit, which is what I wanted anyways, because this is meant to have crafts go from the surface to rendezvous with it, and so by having it at a nice low orbit will help me out later, because I don't like rendezvousing too high above a surface. So we're going to bring it down to 24 kilometers on one side and 34 kilometers on the other, I believe. Like I mentioned before, it's a bit since I actually recorded this episode, so I don't remember the exact parameters that we ended up bringing it to, but nonetheless, a nice low orbit is good. It's a lot easier to see Minmus with this, and this space station doesn't have a lot of use. Like, yeah, it does have the science lab, but for the most part, this is simply just to have because we can. A lot of space stations kind of fall under that classifications of, because we can. But we will get some science out of that, so that's good. Thankfully, we don't have any life support mods in this series, so we can leave these Kerbals on the space station indefinitely without having to provide them any kind of food, water, oxygen, deal with their carbon dioxide, or even switch them out due to health reasons or anything like that. So it's nice. It's been a little bit since we had played series without life support. The series before KXP, the third-person equivalent of it, had life support, and makes things very challenging. And just like that, we drop our periapsis down to a reasonable height. Yep, 24 kilometers. We're going to add a maneuver at the periapsis, and we're just going to go ahead and circularize it. Okay, yeah, so it wasn't 34, it was 24. 24 kilometer circular orbit. So let's plot that into a flight computer. Let our station flip around to face the node. As you see here, I don't even think I have the RCS going. I think this is moved purely by the reaction wheel right there. So, very maneuverable. All in all, I was pretty happy with this craft. I did build it primarily just by eyeballing. I didn't really, sit down and do the calculations of what the best layout would be, or what the best engines or communication devices or anything like that. I kind of just went with gut feeling and intuition and experience. So now let's go ahead and time warp our way to the dark side of the celestial body. Get to see a little sliver of Kerbin over there, as well as our landing craft from a previous mission shows up on our screen, so that's kind of fun. Just a reminder of how much we've done out here and how much is left to do. There is a little squeak toy. I may have to play around with that and see what other sounds we can get with objects that are just randomly floating around in zero gravity. But here we are. We have successfully completed all the aspects to the contract necessary, with the exception of letting it orbit for a day and a half to kind of do the shakeout. And then soon we will have that mission completed as well, and we can start working on the next steps of our project. We are going to be trying to get out to Moho or Jewel, or if we do end up deciding to get rid of the Research Bodies mod, we will probably maybe head for Duna next, actually. We hop into the front cockpit because I realized we're actually passing over our surface base. It's kind of fun. I was hoping that we'd be able to spot it with the naked eye, but unfortunately we could not. Right down there. And so it's nice to see that we are actually within view range of it, and we are indeed in an orbit that will be easy to intercept later on. So very happy with how this mission turned out. So let's go ahead and turn off all the engines in on the entire craft so we don't accidentally fire them by unintentionally and either crash our station into the surface or leave Minmus entirely. We're going to just put it parallel with the surface, and we're going to take some time and look through the cupola, a little viewing port, as we pass through each of the Kerbals on board, all the stowaways. I believe this is Milmi that we're looking through. Milmi is perspective. The camera is one of the props that come in the FreeIVA, and if you take a screenshot with that in your hand, it appears in the screenshot as well. It looks like you took the photo. It was a little fun things. Can't wait till we get to this position in the KXP POV and we start doing a lot more station things. And we probably won't be doing too much more IVA in KXP unless there's an episode that really, calls for it, because I'm going to try to keep that to the other series. But I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you enjoyed seeing through the space station, seeing the FreeIVA mod in all of its glory, because this is the best. I feel like this is the best usage of it as a space station. And yeah, in the next episode, we are going to send a rescue mission out to go pick them up. That's going to be a little bit complicated. We are going to need to design a whole new craft. So that'll be hopefully a little more interesting of a build episode. I want to keep today kind of calm. First KXP episode back after the October hiatus and after such a busy last episode of the Around the World Challenge. And as we pass once again onto the light side of Minmus, I am excited for all the challenges and missions ahead, and I hope you are as well. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more KXP. If you did, please consider subscribing. Drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see y'all in the next one. Take care.